Hey everyone, Cavedan here for the Faithless Brewing podcast, joined by Morde for a special bonus episode all about Sultai Crabvine. I've been fielding a lot of questions about this deck in the past couple days. I talked about it last week and played it in the weekend Modern Super Qualifier to a third place finish, which was a fantastic result and has gotten a lot of people interested in the deck. So we thought, what better time to do a little bit of a deeper dive on the strategy. And to do that, we are going to go to the highest source, namely Anthony Mannino, who is iplaybaddecks on Twitch and Magic Online, who develops the list that I used and has been hard at work innovating on this deck along with many other rogue strategies. So if you're curious about Crabvine or Dredge-style graveyard decks in general, this is the episode for you, because we cover everything. We're going to talk about the build, the mana base, the sideboard, Mulligan strategy, tips and tricks for your sequencing, best and worst matchups, and pitfalls to avoid. We'll also get a chance to hear from Anthony on his unique approach to brewing in Modern, everything from 5-color wizards, Magda changelings, seance, and much more. So that's the plan of attack, and with that, sit back and enjoy the show.
And welcome to our Faithless Brewing special episode. Tonight, follow after the amazing results by our CEO, Cavedan. We're interviewing the brilliant mind behind it all. So tonight, I'm of course joined by our CEO, Dan. How are you doing?
Hey, good to be here.
Glad to hear that. How is everything going these past 5 days? Still excited about the tournament?
Oh gosh. Excited, heartbroken. I mean, listeners to the podcast know that I don't really usually play in challenges or big events, but this is a super qualifier, and Morde and I, we both are eager to get back on the PT. After tasting it once, we just have to qualify again. So
it's still an amazing result, but I 100% get the feeling of heartbrokenness. And also, and not less important, we're joined by the one and only iplaybaddecks, Anthony Mannino. And how is it going, my friend?
Oh, it's going good. I feel very honored to be on this podcast with two good brewers, modern players. I know, I don't know if you guys dabble in any other formats, but I know both you guys from Modern, so I'm very much looking to, one, tell you anything you guys want to know and pick your brain about a bunch of stuff along the way.
So, for everyone that doesn't know, approximately 20 days ago on Christmas Eve, I got the first messages from Anthony Mannino saying, Morde, I found the key to break Crabvine. I found it. It's a rats. Is it a rats, Morde? Super excited. Of course I said, you're insane. Go on, get a new decklist as per usual. But this time, he was in the rights. After a 29-7 result in the first few leagues, he just crushed with it. He was really excited. He won 5 for once in a row and keep complaining about it. But eventually it cracked, and Dan saw the results, started talking to and got the information he needed and just crushed the Super Qualifier.
Well, Anthony started whispering in my ear via Discord. I was trying to get information about this Slugger brew, and Anthony's like, well, actually...
Actually, forget Slugger.
Deck here.
Forget Slugger. Think of the rats. The rats!
It's the power of the rats. And honestly, I can't even fully... Obviously, Crabvine has been a deck for how long now? Since 2016, probably, dating back a bit. Maybe even farther. I'm not sure when the first iteration came out, but I was looking at some random deck lists, and I saw a couple older versions, and I'm like, all right, how can you tweak this? Because it's still Dredge is the main graveyard deck, but, I don't want to play Dredge and be like everybody else, so I thought, let's go different. Let's look at, I love Vengevine, let's look at that and all that stuff. And I said, okay, well, there's no new cards, really, that I first thought of. And, I saw a old list playing a 2 of Rotting Rats, and I'm like, this card seems terrible. It's a 1/1, you each discard a card. I'm like, it just seems bad. But then I'm like, wait, it's a zombie for Gravecrawler. It can discard your Amalgams and your Vengevines from your hands. Maybe it's not terrible. And I just, played a bunch of different versions of it, some with Grist and Satyr Wayfinder and Unearths and Scab Ruinators and all these other random terrible cards.
Yeah, I likely have most of them alongside our chat. It was a train wreck after another until he found the pieces.
Yeah, it was just a bunch of testing of different iterations of what works best, and then it turns out that, Rotting Rats alongside Otherworldly Gaze were the two key cards that really, I think, took the deck up a notch and, allowed me to run hot.
Tell us something about the basics, about the structure of the deck. So, what's the initial plan? What do you want to see in a hand? What is the deck built around?
So I got to give credit to Dan because on maybe one of the last episodes, he mentioned how what your opening hand is sometimes worse than your 6, and your 6 is worse than your 5, and all that stuff, because you have so many cards, probably 20 cards that you don't want to see in your opening hand. Vengevines, Amalgams, Creeping Chills are the main ones, so like if you have a 7 with 2 of those cards, that's a 5. And so when you have your opening hand, you want to look for, obviously, you don't want those cards in your hand first off, but you want to look for the main important cards are Hedron Crab and Gaze are the two best cards in the beginning turns that allows you to set up for the really explosive turn 2. You have other cards like Stitcher Supplier and Merfolk Secret Keeper, which allow you to bin cards, but they don't have the same like firepower that Gaze and Crab do. So generally you want to look for a hand. I tend to look for hands with 2 of those cards, a mix of Supplier, Gaze, Crab, and Secret Keeper. I'd really mull anything else besides that in terms of keeping your opening hand. And then it's just, variance, obviously, hoping the top of your deck is kind to you and that you're going to get lucky with Chills or Vengevines and all that stuff. But, you're going to spiral at some point and mill a bunch and you're just going to put too much pressure on them. But generally you want to look for a hand with 2, I call them action cards, that allow you to start binning cards right away.
Yeah, it's really interesting for me. I'm not used to playing decks like this that mulligan so aggressively and that follow such...
But you do love Gaze. So there's a point of connection.
I do love Otherworldly Gaze. So when I saw that you put that in, Anthony, I was like, all right, I'm ready to give Crabvine a chance. But yeah, it's just like because of that strength of the 6 and 5 card hands, you end up seeing 2 to 2.5 opening hands per game, and you really do get a bunch of chances to find the most powerful starts. So normally if I'm describing a deck and I'm describing my nut draw to someone, they'd be like, oh, okay, that's cool. It'd be nice if you do that once in a while, but that doesn't happen that often. But with this deck, I feel like you really are doing that exact start like half the games because you're aggressively mulliganing for it.
I would say more often than not, you're putting pressure on them, turn 2 or turn 3, like 70% of the time, just because you're able to mull to those hands a lot faster. Now, in the beginning, when I started playing the deck, and I've seen other people pick it up and do the same mistakes, is they'll keep like the trap hands of Stitcher Supplier, Gravecrawler with like a Rotting Rat, and you're like, all right, like, but that's not enough. To me, that's just a really bad beatdown plan.
It's so slow. You're too fair for Modern.
Yep, if you're playing against a Prismatic Ending deck and your Supplier gets Prismatic Ending, you're just like, okay, I milled 3, it could have been 3 lands, you're stuck with nothing. So you always want to have at least 2 action cards, obviously more the better, but like 2 of those Hedron Crab Supplier, Hedron Crab Gaze, Gaze Secret Keeper, something like that to really, start off well. And you never, I shouldn't say never, but under most circumstances, never play Crab turn 1, because it doesn't do anything for you. It's always turn 2 play best with a fetch land that you want to play. I've seen a lot of people play it turn 1 and then, not get any value from it. But yeah, Gaze was kind of the card, because Glimpse the Unthinkable, I think, Dan, you tried out as a 2 of.
Oh yeah, it sucked.
Yeah, it's just...
I feel really bad because you worked really hard on the list. I changed like a couple of cards. I've tore down the sideboard.
You're still top 3. You still made it to the semis, yeah.
Barely using that sideboard at all because my sideboard was terrible.
I didn't want to be the one saying it.
And then like because that deck got published, people are going to be copying that list. So I see people like picking up my list from the qualifier and then like they're like, why are the Tarmogoyfs here? These Glimpse the Unthinkables are not doing anything. I wonder why they're still here. I'm like, well, it's because they shouldn't be there, first of all.
So I'm going to ask a few questions as a... For anyone that knows me, playing combo is like my opposite. I would never play this deck besides playing with Ant just because I love the guy to play with him, but this is not my strategy. That's completely out of my comfort zone, so a few questions regarding the specifics. Why one Wonder?
One Wonder, so Wonder will steal you games, because there's some games that will go long against decks that can, I've had games go long against Shadow, which is a really good matchup for the deck. And they fill the board with shadows, and you can't really have any good attacks because they're, still killing some of your things, and you're trying to spend resources to bring it back. And then you find Wonder, and then it's like, oh, I'm just going to kill you in one shot. Their DRCs are probably already tapped from attacking. Yet Wonder steals you a lot of games. It steals you games against Murktide as well. Being able to chump. I've won countless games against Murktide by chump blocking with Secret Keepers, because Murktide's going to steal them the game as well. By getting it out on turn 2, turn 3, and putting that pressure on you where it's like, can I keep up with a 7/7 outside of chumping with the Narcomoeba, which is probably just going to bolt anyway. But Wonder allows you to steal games. And in certain matchups, it's no good. Against control-style decks.
You feel the one-off is almost free.
Yeah, it's free, yeah. I would, if there was another one-of I wanted to play, I'd play 61 cards, and Wonder would be the 61 card.
Okay.
I think it's free to include. You can bin it to Rotting Rats if it's in your opening hand. It being in the graveyard is just free value. You're always fetching a Watery Grave 99% of the time first. So you have an island to act, to have its ability actually work. So it will win you games where you might be stuck looking for those last couple points of damage, and it's like, oh, now my Gravecrawlers have flying, you can't chump block them forever, and I'm just gonna, get 8 extra damage in where I couldn't have before.
If I could translate this to something that Morde would understand, it's like your one-of Magus of the Moon in your Illidamer's Call deck.
yeah, but I can get my mouse. My question is, can you reliably mill enough of your deck to find Wonder when the situation requires so?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, that's where it goes.
Well, no, I would say Dan can also answer this one because he's played the deck now, that you usually mill close to 30 cards in your library.
In a grindy game. Like it's around that?
Yeah, I mean, there's some games where you just put like 2 Vengevines on turn 1 or turn 2, and they're like, you get the nut and they're just dead and they can't keep up. But there's a lot of games that go long that you'll mill 30 to 35 cards, and then you're saying, okay, if you had a 50% chance to hit Wonder, you're probably taking that because it's free, right? So that's...
I agree.
Yeah, I think 30 cards by turn 4 is normal. So if that's considered a grindy game, then yes.
That's a grindy modern. So
a grindy game, you would go through your entire deck, which happened to me a couple times in the qualifier.
I want to talk slightly about some differences in both your builds, and I want to give Dan a chance to defend himself of what I consider a sin after that. So first, how was Glimpse? Was Glimpse decent? Was a decent inclusion? Do you feel it's stuck in your hand too often as that too slow? Because I see that Dan has Glimpse while Dante doesn't.
So I played 2 copies of Glimpse, and my reasoning was that all previous versions of Crabvine used to play Glimpse. That was my only reason.
Okay.
And I felt like Anthony had discovered the power of Otherworldly Gaze, but I wasn't sure, I hadn't asked you about this, whether you hated Glimpse or you just like hadn't tried playing Gaze with extra copies of Glimpse. So I thought it would give me a little extra firepower. It turns out that it's just like a really unimpressive way to spend your mana. Because a Glimpse has like a finality to it. Once it's resolved, you just get what you get, and that's the end of the turn. It very rarely results in any board presence unless you happen to get exactly Narcomoeba and a Prized Amalgam. And sometimes you just like don't get anything from it.
Yeah, you're not developing in any ways. You're not pushing towards finding Shrine, you're not pushing towards finding Narco, you're not developing your hand, you're doing nothing.
I think Glimpse is really good against like the burn decks because you just want to hit your Creeping Chills as fast as possible, and like you want to just
I can see that.
Put a bunch of stuff in the graveyard. But there's a lot of games where you need like a specific card, or you're looking for another land to go with your Hedron Crab, which is honestly the most thing I do all the time, or you're looking for another 1-drop to get back your Vengevine, or a 2-drop if you have 3 mana or something like that. So Gaze, 1 in your opening hand is great because you can sculpt your next couple draws of what you want to bin, what you don't want to draw, but throughout the game, like if you didn't have Glimpse in your opening hand with normal Crabvine, it was a dead card in your deck when you milled it. Did nothing.
Yeah.
You were hoping to draw it at some point, maybe later in the game, but at that point you probably should already be winning. Where Gaze, you mill it the first couple cards, maybe you do it, maybe you flash it back on turn 2 and then set up for a big turn 3. There's like so many ways you can use the card where I never thought, I was like, oh, this is just better than Glimpse. Yeah, you see, less cards than Glimpse, but you see less, but you see more at the same time because you're seeing the actual cards, which ones you want to bin, which ones you want to draw for the next couple turns.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think Gaze is better than 100% Gaze is better than Glimpse. The question is if Glimpse is that bad that it's not even worth playing. And the answer seems to be, unless you're fighting as a really burn meta or such, it's better not to have it.
Yeah, I cited it out almost every game.
Okay, perfect.
So.
Second question. The mana base is so different. Disregarding the fact that I will accuse Stan of heresy soon enough because of something else, why is the mana base so different?
So when I built the mana base, I thought, and I still kind of think, but I see Dan's point a lot, I want to try it, that your most important land is Watery Grave first. Yes. That gives you your two main colors 100%. Next, I always wanted to fetch a basic swamp second. And because you never really need multiple blue sources unless you're like double flashbacking a gaze or something like that. But most of the time you're going to find another Watery Grave anyway. But I never found myself like really needing the second blue early. And I kept getting got by Blood Moon. I'd have Vengevines in the graveyard and I would have like, one swamp, which means I couldn't really double cast anything. So then I changed the mana base to like 2 swamps, and I'm like, all right, that's good. It saves my life total a bit. I don't have to fetch shock aggressively so much. And then I was like, I want the 3rd swamp. Even though sometimes you'll get a hand where you have like 2 swamps and you have a Hedron Crab in your hand. To me that was a risk I was willing to take. 1, to preserve a little bit of life, and 2, not get destroyed by Blood Moon. Because swamps later in the game are more important than islands are, because swamps you're casting your grave crawlers. Your card casting Creeping Chills, and, all those, type of cards. That's kind of how I saw it. But I do think I should probably adjust the mana base to play a basic island. Just because I think, again, like having another out to a Blood Moon effect is pretty strong, if you can make the mana work for it.
My counterpoint was that after playing probably 4 leagues with your initial list unmodified, I felt like there were a bunch of games where I wanted blue as my first 3 spells, because you have Merfolk Secret Keeper and Venture Deeper. Those are both blue pips. Otherworldly Gaze, Hedron Crab. I felt like I had a lot of sequences where I definitely wanted to play a blue spell on turn 1. I felt like the best blue spell on turn 1 is Gaze, followed by Venture Deeper. And then on turn 2, I wanted to play a crab, and often my second play was going to be a blue spell. Now, having played many more leagues now, I see that actually, okay, for all the times that happens, you also have a bunch of games where you need black early and often as well, and you really need blue and black very, very early. So maybe the solution is actually like 1 island, 2 swamps. That's what I'm on right now.
I think I like that the most. I think you need an island. I think no islands is sort of insane from your parent, but I think you prefer black over. I think a breeding pool is insanity, for example.
Yeah, I think
I think 2 islands is a bit insane. I would even go 1 island, 1 swamp only. And I think the breeding pool is insanity. And targeted at Dan, what was your plan against a turn 2 Sanctifier besides just zooming it up?
Tarmogoyf, obviously. Well, that's the interesting thing. I mean, there are not that many hate cards. This is like a different aspect of the deck. Which cards do you fold to, and which cards can you play through? And Sanctifier is one of the worst cards for the way that I had built the deck, because I was not playing anything that could remove it in the sideboard. But that ties back into the mana base question, because what card would you play in Sultai colors that can effectively kill the card? And Anthony solved that by splashing white in his sideboard, but I found that like just having that extra Godless Shrine in my mana base was like really screwing me up. So I just decided to try it without it.
It's so weird to both hear you. Like, we're both amazing players in my mind. And had amazing results. I mean, like, you had an amazing result, and somehow you two really consider the main color of the deck to be different. Like, Anthony is playing a black deck splashing blue, and you're playing a blue deck splashing black. And I have no idea how 2 good players playing the same deck can reach such a different conclusion.
Identical spells.
It's the same deck! It's the same deck! And almost the same color requirements in the sideboard. Like, it's shocking to me what I'm hearing. Like, that, I'm just like a draw, because you're like, this collection is bad. Oh, but this breeding pool, this fixes all my problems.
Yeah, I think
like, islands. I don't need islands. If they land on me, I'm not playing blue. Like, what the how?
So how I looked at playing the Godless Shrine for Prismatic Ending was, online especially, Hammer you could make an argument for is the best and most popular deck. And I hate Hammer as a deck. Mainly not because it's bad, because I always face it and lose to it. And not that this deck has a good matchup versus. I beat it before, but you just have to hope they stumble and you have a crazy draw and all that stuff. But like Prismatic Ending, yes, there are a lot of games after you board them in, you're going to mill your Godless Shrine. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But like if you have it in your opening hand and you know the one card against Hammer that they're bringing in is Sanctifier 99% of the time,
yeah,
okay, you're going to fetch Godless Shrine first. Maybe that screws up your first turn or something like that. But a lot of the times I figured I can't beat that card. Not, unless you have like the Vengevine turn 2 and you're on the play or something like that, but you can't beat that card with no hate. So Prismatic Ending kind of gave me another out for it. It also has, capabilities against like DRC, which is kind of a problem for the deck because it can fly over fast, but don't get me wrong, it's super risky. I'm not saying, I've talked to Dan and I still think the sideboard could be better. We've talked about Pongify, because you can Pongify your Gravecrawler, you can Pongify your Stitcher Supplier.